أمسك مصحفي وأقرأ أدعي ربي اغفر لي أنا أحبك يا شهر الخير يا رمضان.
الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على سيد الأولين والآخرين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن دعا بدعوته إلى يوم الدين وبعد. All praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings be constantly showered upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad, the master of the first and the last of humanity, and upon his companions, his followers, his family, and all those who establish his sunnah to the day of judgment. My beloved brothers and sisters, I begin with the greeting words of the righteous. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, it is a great privilege again to be with you here in the month of Ramadan. And this month comes at a very critical point in the history of the Muslims, not only here in North America, but all around the world. Muslims today have reached what you could call a crossroads. In one direction, there is imminent destruction. There is a well-orchestrated plan to put out the light of Islam. There is a highly financed movement to take away the light of Allah from the hearts of people and to give the wrong image and impression of what Muslims actually stand for. The other road is one of light and hope. And this one, to a great extent, as the Prophet ﷺ has described, that the path to paradise is surrounded by makari, by things which are hateful, difficulties. But it is a path of light. And so on one hand, as the Prophet ﷺ described, there's one road surrounded by desires, right, leads to hellfire, another one surrounded by hateful things, but it's actually leading to paradise. And that is so meaningful to us as we go into the month of Ramadan here in the northern countries above the equator, when this is considered to be the summer solstice. And for people living in the northern countries, this is the time when the days are the longest. So this year, you could consider to be the longest possible fast that Muslims could have on this calendar, on the solar calendar. And that might seem very dangerous or very difficult, but amongst the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, their concepts were completely different. And one of the great companions, Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh, when he was asked, what do you love the most? And this is a question that many people may be asked, like, what do you love the most? People usually talk about material things. But when they asked him, he said, I love fasting on a hot day. That was, he loved the most. Think about this now. Because in his understanding of what fasting is, doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he, on a hot, long day, you would get more reward. You come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is an understanding that we need to try to come close to as we go through this month and as we go through the physical changes that we are going through. People are fasting for many different reasons. Imsak is a concept that transcends religion. Imsak, meaning abstinence, staying away from things, is done for many reasons. There are some people who do imsak for medical reasons. And they stay away from things, and there's the well-known physical condition of what they call allergies. And that is that the person is allergic to certain substances. And so if the person, for instance, is allergic to nuts, then they will search the ingredients of every product to make sure there are no nuts inside of it. Because when they eat the nut, their body reacts. So they do imsak. They stay away from that. Other people stay away from houses that have dogs and cats. There are many reasons why people abstain. In other words, you stay away from things. You specially protect yourself so that you don't engage in that particular issue. Right? This is the concept of imsak. There are other people who do imsak for political reasons. And they have what is called today in the world a hunger strike. And the hunger strike is usually done for political reasons, where people who are suffering in prisons unjustly, and they want to get their message out to the world, then they will abstain from eating and drinking. We recently saw this happening in Guantanamo Bay. So people will now literally say, I will not eat, I will not drink, I will take nothing. Okay? And then in some forms of hunger strike, they allow liquids. If you say you want to do a hunger strike, then they will literally have somebody who will come to you and explain to you the rules of a hunger strike. Because there are certain rules, there are certain things you can do and certain things you shouldn't do. Because the idea is that the strike should go for as long as possible. So if you started exercising and whatnot and sweating, your hunger strike would probably be shorter than somebody else who conserved their energy. So they got to tell you how to do the hunger strike. So they literally abstain for political reasons. There are other people who abstain from things for social reasons. Today in the world, the fashions are forcing many people to wear very tight clothes. Some of the clothing now, you can literally peel it on and peel it off the body. But the human body is not made to wear clothes like this. And so some people, when they wear these clothes, they don't look good. And their intention is to look good. And so they fast. They literally starve themselves in order to lose weight to wear the clothes. And they even developed a type of disease, or they isolated it, anorexia, where especially young females would literally eat food and they would vomit the food up because they wanted to be thin, because thin was the image, or is the image. So they literally throw the food up. And so this is a form of imsak. It's social reasons. In some religions, people, when they fast or when they do imsak, their intention is to punish themselves. It's to do a form of penance. So you have many different forms of imsak. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us in the second chapter of the Quran in verse 183, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, kutiba alaykumus siyam, kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed upon you, as it has been prescribed on those who came before you, in order that you would gain taqwa. You would have the consciousness of Allah. So the reason why Muslims are fasting is not a physical thing, it is not a political statement, but it is to gain nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is to gain what you could call a type of consciousness. It's a spiritual thing. And that understanding, if people have this understanding, this will give you a completely different fast. Because it's not just a physical struggle. There's something else that is going on. And that concept of changing the self, of purifying the self, coming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, gaining this spiritual protection. And the ulama look at taqwa as al-khawf wal-raja. It is like a combination of fear and hope, that you fear the punishment of Allah, but at the same time you hope in the mercy of Allah. And this develops a type of conscience. It's an inner strength, an inner quality based upon the connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what we are striving for when we go through this experience of fasting. And in this part of the world, if we have the right understanding, then inshallah we can gain a great reward in this, and hopefully inshallah some change can come about. Change is so important to the Muslim world today. Transformation. And we look at our Ummah and we find Muslims all over the world, large in numbers, countries in strategic positions. We find great mineral wealth, amazing substances below the surface of our countries, young people. Over 60% of Muslims in many parts of the world are under 25 years old. Amazing potential. But at the same time, we're not getting a result. So the wealth is there, but at the same time, we have tremendous poverty. The strategic position is there, the large numbers are there, but yet we feel a type of frustration. Things going on inside of our countries are completely driving people to do things that we would never consider to do. People pouring out of the Muslim world, throwing themselves into the Mediterranean Sea in order to go to the lands of people who are not Muslims, right? Running away from countries traditionally known to be the Dar al-Islam or the Dar al-Salam, the abode of peace. But because it has been changed into an abode of war or an abode of fitan, problems, then people justifiably want to leave. They justifiably want to leave. But the question is, what happened to the Muslims in the Muslim world? Change is critical. Transformation is critical. And in order to transform, we need to now follow certain well-trodden paths, sunnatullah. We cry for political change. There are some who cry for an Islamic state. And they went to one of the North African scholars and they said they wanted to have an Islamic state. And he told them, when he looked at them and analyzed them, he basically answered and he said, يَطْلُبُونَ الْفَتْحَ دُونَ الشُّرُوطِ. They are seeking the victory without fulfilling the conditions of the victory. So they want Medina, they want an Islamic state, they want to have this ideal society without fulfilling the conditions of Medina, which is Mecca, and is the Hijrah. So in other words, before Medina came, even in the revealing of the Quran itself, before the verses of Ahkam, before the laws and the rules of Islam were revealed, the Muslims went through the Meccan period. And that was a period of suffering, sacrifice. Their tawheed was strengthened, the oneness of God. Their characters were literally molded by the strange conditions, the difficulties that they found themselves in the Meccan period. Concept of the akhirah was strengthened. And they were not even able to resist when people fought them. They couldn't fight back. So they literally went through this suffering for 13 years, migrated, leaving all their material things, reached Medina. Allah gave them authority in the land, and when the authority of the land was established, then the rules, the verses of the ahkam were actually revealed. So the scholar was saying to the people, you want Medina, but you didn't do Mecca yet. So there's certain changes that we have to go through, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly told us in Surah Al-Ra'd verse 11, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change that which is in themselves. So the internal change, transformation. And to transform, which is a movement, we need to have a goal. What are we transforming to? What will we become? Rasulullah ﷺ is the best example, uswatun hasana, of what we want to become. But also, the example of his companions is an example of transformation. It is an example of goals that we can reach as believers. And the Prophet ﷺ said, خَيْرُ النَّاسِ قَرْنِي ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ. The best of people are my generation, then the generation that follows them, and then the generation that follows them. So the Prophet ﷺ described that the best of people is my generation. And that requires patience, even with the young people as well. But the best generation, it's my generation. And then the ones that followed them, and then the ones that followed them. So in that first generation, there is examples for us. And this year, inshallah, in this month, we want to look at certain aspects of Islam in order to extract qualities that we could try to develop in ourselves and we could emphasize in our younger people in order to bring about transformation. Because transformation is the key, one of the key issues today. We're in crisis now, literal crisis. Look at our countries. Look at what is going on. So some change has to come about. And Allah told us, it's inside of us, man. It's in our hearts, it's in our intentions. It's in our character. It's not necessarily on the outside, because we have a lot of things on the outside. And one of the crucial areas that always arises in terms of Muslim families, Muslim communities, Muslim nations is leadership. The leadership is a crucial issue. I visited many cities in the Western world, and I visit Muslims, and many times the Muslims say, Brother Abdullah, we need a leader. We need direction. Like we have a lot of good followers. We have jamaats, we have people, musallin. But the leaders, which direction are we going to go in? If the leaders are going to be fighting each other or splitting hairs, as we say in the West, in other words, they make a big issue out of small things. If there are reasons inside of themselves why they make decisions and not based upon the Book of Allah or the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, then the whole Jamaat, in a sense, goes astray because it is the leaders. And the Prophet ﷺ said, the thing I fear for you the most is a'immatul mudillin. It is leaders who will take you astray. And so in the area of leadership, one of the great companions of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and this is a companion that you may know his name, you may be familiar with his name, but you may not be aware of some of his exploits, of some of the things that he was able to achieve. And I believe that in this individual, as in many other companions of the Prophet ﷺ, there is a sterling example of the type of leadership we need today. And that leader, his name was Amir ibn Abdullah ibn al-Jarrah, radiallahu anh. And he was known as Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah. This is a name that you have probably heard before, but the depths of this individual needs to be understood. Because he has certain qualities that we are in crucial need of today. When you described Abu Ubaidah, radiallahu anh, he was a slim-built person, tall, a sparsely grown beard. He was a pleasant person to look at, and he was very polite and very courteous type of person. And, but he was also described as a very, as a strong person. And this is an amazing quality right away you'll start to see about Abu Ubaidah. That this person is, he is humble, and he is modest, and they describe him as kathir al-haya. He had haya, he had modesty. And modesty is a very important quality for Muslims, to the point where the Prophet ﷺ even said, inna al-haya min al-iman, that haya, modesty, shame, knowing the limits, is part of your faith. And this is a crucial quality. In the Western countries, many times, haya is connected with weakness. Like if a person is shy and they can't look you in the face and they're humble, that is connected with a weak person. And even today, when people in the business sector, they go to get a job in Canada, and they come in and they say, okay, give this person an interview. And they look at you and they want you to look the person in the eye and be bold and talk a lot. Right? Whereas in many of the Muslim countries, people, when you come around leaders, you're more reserved. The native people who populated this part of the world for thousands of years also had this quality. When they come to elders or they come to leaders, they are humble. They respect the wisdom of that person. But here, it's the opposite in the sense that they want you to like look the person in the eye and, you know, bold and whatnot. And, you know, so if you're humble, they say that person's weak, don't give him the job, because he's modest and shy. Especially a man now who now lowers his gaze, a woman, who they cover themselves up in modesty. You're not exposing your body brazenly. They say, well, there's something wrong with that person. Okay? And that's the opposite of what Abu Ubaidah was. And Abu Ubaidah brings this quality, which is a type of jamia quality, in that he was shy and modest, but yet he was very courageous. And they describe him as the sharp side of the sword. In other words, he's a very humble person, but when difficult situation comes, he becomes like the sharp side of the sword. He cuts right through it. In other words, when danger comes, he becomes a lion. So this is the quality that we're looking for. A person who is polite, who is humble, who is modest and shy and knows the limits, but when danger comes, that person is resolute. This is Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu. We don't want leaders who terrify everybody. They scare everybody. Some wrong concept amongst Muslims. Many youth think, if I scare them half to death, if I terrorize them, then they'll listen to me. That's the wrong concept. That's the wrong concept. It is, the Prophet ﷺ was described, they said his image, his reputation was so great that when a person came to Medina and they went to the masjid and saw the believers, they would be like a little afraid to meet the Prophet ﷺ, but when they met him, they were so comfortable they didn't want to leave him. It was the opposite of what they expected. This great leader, but yet he treats you like an average person. He's a humble person at the same time. So you see this quality now. It's extremely important to see how it's a balance, right? Not one extreme or another extreme. And Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, he said there were 3 people in Quraysh. They were the most prominent people. They were the best in character. And they were extremely modest. They were the best of Quraysh. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Uthman ibn Affan, and Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah radiallahu anhu. These 3 people in Quraysh. Okay? They are most prominent. And then Abdullah, he also said, he said about these people a very important thing. He said, these 3 people, when they speak to you, they tell you the truth. And when you speak to them, they do not accuse you of lying. They don't suspect you. Su'a dhan. Okay? They're very straightforward, very clear, right? And they don't have what they call prejudice, prejudgment. You see the person and you judge them. Many places, I used to go to places, a Muslim would come and say, "Assalamu alaikum, brother, which country do you come from?" Because he wants to know which country you come from. He's looking at your clothes, and then he's going to judge you, right? He's going to put you in a box, right? That's prejudice, right? These people do not have su'adhan. This is extremely important for leadership. Not to be judging people, not suspecting people. Suspicion is a terrible thing, and it can lead to a lot of confusion in the whole of the ummah. So Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anh, and amongst these three, his haya, he was known for his modesty. And surprisingly enough, Abu Ubaidah was one of the sabiqun, one of the early companions. He actually accepted Islam one day after Abu Bakr. Now we know about Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anh, the first adult male. It was Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh, the first male. But the first adult male to accept Islam is Abu Bakr. A lot of people don't realize Abu Ubaidah accepted Islam the next day. So this is of the early companions. And there were just a few people who actually embraced Islam in that early period. And this is a time when it was extremely dangerous to be Muslim. And if you did not have a serious tribe in back of you, you're in trouble. People would be tortured, they would suffer, they would go through all kinds of changes there in that early Meccan period. Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anh, he suffered through this to the point where the Prophet ﷺ allowed him to make the migration to Al-Habasha, to Ethiopia, Abyssinia. And so he was one of the early companions who made this hijrah and came back and went back, and finally he makes the major hijrah to Medina. And Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anh, all along is like a pillar of strength. He's a pillar of strength. He's a very kind, courteous person. So people who are embracing Islam, he's soft and kind to them. Situation gets difficult, he becomes a strong column of the truth. So this is the quality that he had. And he makes the migration to Medina. And now he reaches in Medina, and the Muslims now have a home. But now they hear that the Quraysh had gone around and stolen their goods from their homes, because they had to leave just about everything. Abu Sufyan gathers their goods and takes it on a caravan to Syria. So the Prophet ﷺ gathered together about 313 of the Sahabah to meet them to take back their goods. Abu Sufyan was a very wise person, knowing the world, worldly, and he escaped. And he alerted the Quraysh, and when the Prophet ﷺ and his companions turned around, there was an army of over 1,000 warriors, 300 horsemen. They would not come for this, but they were confronted with it. And this was Yawm al-Furqan. This was the day that Allah separated truth from falsehood. And in this struggle that went on, Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anh, he played a tremendous role in this. Of course, his strength. He is so courageous on the battlefield. But it is reported in some of the texts that he was confronted by this individual. And this individual came straight at him, and contrary to his general character in warfare, he retreated from this person. And he went to another position. Then the person went to meet him there, and then he sort of retreats another position. Then the person meets him there and corners him and attacks him, and he has nothing to do, and he strikes the person the blow, and the person dies. After the battle, he was very thoughtful and pensive, and they came to him and they said, "Who was that person? Who was that one?" And he said, "It was my father." Think about this, man. He said, "It's my father." So Abu Ubaidah by this move, cut all ties with tribalism. All ties. And this is a crucial issue today, because the issue of tribalism, the issue of family, race, is one of the most dangerous qualities that is arising amongst the Muslims. Tribalism. Amongst the Arabs in that time, tribalism was a way of life. And the Arabs would say, Unsur akhaka dhaliman o madluma. Help your brother, whether he's oppressor or oppressed. As long as that is your brother, as we say in America, blood is thicker than water. You help your brother. Tribalism was a way of life. And your father represents the generations that you come from. You cherish your blood. You cherish it. In some countries, they even took it to the point of what they call ancestor worship, where you literally worship through your ancestors. And this is a phenomenon all around the world. Abu Ubaidah cut it. Cut ties completely. Yes, you are my blood, but my family is the family of Islam. And this issue is one of the key issues after Tawheed and Shirk itself. One of the key issues that Muslims have to overcome. It's tribalism. I am an Arab. I am Turkish. I am Persian. I am African. I am American. I am Canadian. Whatever. I'm taller than you. I'm light-skinned. You're dark-skinned. I speak this language. These are all petty divisions that are put there in front of us. It's not the real individuals. The real individual, as the Prophet ﷺ said, that there is no preference of Arab over non-Arab or vice versa, or black over white or vice versa, illa bit-taqwa, except for the consciousness of Allah. That's taqwa again. That's what separates individuals. So Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anh, he was clear in his position. Another great quality the following year, another confrontation happened, Uhud. When the Quraysh now came with a larger army to destroy the Muslims, and Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anh finds himself in this situation. The Muslims have to defend the city. There's a large army now. The Mount Uhud is in their back. And there's a small mount on the side, and archers are placed there. And, it's a difficult situation. The Prophet ﷺ described Uhud. He said it was the most awkward situation in my life, was this one. The most awkward situation. Because the Muslims took a stand, and they moved against the Quraysh, defending themselves. The Quraysh retreated, and they were literally running away, and then the archers who were supposed to protect the backs of the Muslims lost control of themselves and ran with the so-called victorious believers, leaving the back exposed. And Khalid ibn Walid, who later becomes a Muslim, radiallahu anh, he takes the cavalry and he comes in back. So the Quraysh then turned, saw Khalid in the back, and then the Muslims were in a sandwich. From two sides, they were now being attacked. And it was a state of confusion. People were running to the right, to the left. They even said, one of them said, I killed Muhammad. They said, I killed him. So this was a crisis. And some people were actually, it is reported, some of them even gave up. They were going to go back to Medina. They didn't know what was going to happen. The Quraysh then, came forward. The Prophet ﷺ and his companions, took their shield with the mountain and moved back towards. The Quraysh came in on them, wanting to take his life. And it is reported that there were 10 people who shielded the Prophet ﷺ. 10 individuals and a few others, but 10 in particular who shielded him with their bodies. One of them was a woman, by the way, and inshallah we're going to study about her. 10 people who shielded the Prophet ﷺ in this critical thing that the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, it is the most awkward situation in my life. Why? The Quraysh knocked him in a ditch, smashed his helmet into his face. And he's saying, why would the people do this to their Prophet? Like, why? Why are they doing this? And they're moving on him. Finally, by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the believers around him, the Quraysh started to retreat. When they looked at the Prophet ﷺ, they found blood pouring down his body. They found the rings of the helmet were smashed into his face. And in order to help him out of this, you had to extract these rings. You had to extract this metal from his face. And they went to take it out with their hands. Abu Ubaidah said no. And he took his front teeth and he lodged it into the ring and pulled it out, losing his teeth. Every time he did it, he would be losing his front teeth. This is mahabbah. This is love. He didn't care about himself. He only cared about the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. This is true mahabbah. That's the love that our leaders need to have. Not that they loved the Prophet so much, peace be upon him so much, they will come to a gathering and sit there for a couple of minutes and then run away into their palaces. No. This is true love that Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anh had for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. At the same time, Abu Ubaidah, he is totally committed. He follows commands, and he continued this. And it is reported, and again, this selflessness of Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anh, it is reported that another caravan was going along the coast, and so the Prophet ﷺ sent Abu Ubaidah and the companions, a small group, in order to meet this caravan, but their supplies ran out. They were down by Jeddah on the coast. But they had to wait for this caravan to come. It came to the point where each companion had one date. Your supplies for the day was one date. And you better hope it is majul dates. You know the majul dates? That's a big one. One date for the whole day. Then the dates ran out. And they started to eat from the thorn tree, this khabat, so they call it Jaysh al-Khabat, that they literally ate from the thorn tree, like that was their food. But they held their position. This is Abu Ubaidah. This is how he's developing now as a leader, a completely committed leader that you would call multazim person, committed, fully committed to the deen. But you know this quality of Abu Ubaidah, the balance that our leaders need so much? Later on in the Medina period, the Prophet ﷺ was sending out letters. He was entertaining groups, wufud, amal wufud. So there were groups coming in to Medina to accept Islam. A group came from a place called Najran. And Najran in southern Arabia now, just above Yemen. And the people of Najran were Christians. There was an ancient Christian society. Remember that Christianity and Judaism were actually in the Arabian Peninsula in early times. Remember this. And you remember even that the army of Abraha, the Ethiopians who actually conquered Yemen, and they built cathedrals there and whatnot. So there were Christian remnants there. So these people came to Medina, and they were seeking audience with the Prophet ﷺ. They came out in their beautiful clothes. The Prophet ﷺ said, change your clothes. This is not arrogance here. And they said, we were Muslim before you. Look how arrogant they were. So the Prophet ﷺ engaged them in a debate. It's an interesting debate. At the end, it reached the point where they were so arrogant, the Prophet ﷺ then, with guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, said, we will now seek the curse of Allah. Whoever is right, then get your children, your families, get everybody. And we will call la'natullah on the one who is wrong. Okay, that's if you believe that you're right. Now, let's take it to the furthest extreme. They said, we give up. Okay, so we accept you. But we're not going to accept Islam. We're going to live under the Muslims. So the Prophet ﷺ then said, you can pay jizya. And jizya is a tax that is paid by non-Muslims in a Muslim state. It's wrongly being defined today as a terrible poll tax. Actually, jizya is more than zakat. But everybody pays taxes. We pay tax here in Canada because your infrastructure, how are your streets going to be cleaned and your water running and whatever, you pay tax. So literally, someone who's not a Muslim can live with Muslims, but and they don't pay zakat. They don't have sadaqah like us. So therefore, they give the jizya. So the people of Najran, and this is the shahid here, this is the witness, they came to the Prophet ﷺ and they said, we have an economic problem. Our books are confused. So can you send somebody that you love and Allah loves who can help us sort out our affairs? So the Prophet ﷺ looked at his companions. Of course, Umar wanted to be the one, but the Prophet looked at Abu Ubaidah and said, go with the Najranis. So look at this now. Abu Ubaidah is completely dedicated to Islam, multazim, but yet he's sent amongst Christians who have not accepted Islam. And he's going to help them sort out their affairs with an Islamic mind, right? So they can have enough money to pay the jizya. So in other words, you're going to work with non-Muslims. You're a highly committed person, but you're going to work with non-Muslims to help them straighten their own lives out, give them the example of Islam. Look at that quality. Many cases today, if a person is committed, it's either my way or the highway. He doesn't want to hear anybody else. My jamaat, my sheikh, that's it. No, we're talking about the type of leadership that is committed to the deen, but they can go amongst people who are not Muslims, and they can work with these people. They can bring out the best in these people. That is one of the greatest forms of da'wah today. So Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anh, he continued in his amazing relationship with the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala manifesting through his life and his character. And after the death of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the Ansars of Medina went to a garden. They went to this Saqifa, Banu Sa'ada, and they went to the garden and they went to choose somebody from amongst themselves to be the leader. They figured, well, we're the people of Medina, so we're going to choose a leader because it's Medina. Okay? And they were choosing now their leader, and then the Muhajirin came, people of Mecca. And they said, no, this job has to come from us. And so many reports talk about Umar ibn Khattab looking at Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, but there are reports that show that Umar first looked at Abu Ubaidah. And he quoted the Prophet ﷺ, who was saying, Inna li kulli umma aminan, wa inna amin hadhihi al-umma Abu Ubaidah. Umar said, the Prophet ﷺ said, every nation has a custodian, a truthful, trustworthy person. And the custodian, the Amin of this ummah is Abu Ubaidah. So he stretched to Abu Ubaidah. Abu Ubaidah now, look what's happening. You can be the Khalifa, right? You can be the leader. What does Abu Ubaidah say? He said, how can I accept the leadership? In words. He said, how can I accept it? When there is one who made the hijrah with the Prophet ﷺ, who led us in salat all the time when the Prophet was sick. And he stretched his hand to Abu Bakr and Umar, and everybody gave the pledge to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anh. The shahid here is leadership. He didn't want to be the leader. He didn't want to be the leader. This is a sickness amongst us. You give a person a little bit of leadership and they go to the ends of the earth. You know when you're traveling on the road and you need to have an Amir, right? They say, let one be the Amir so we can decide, are we going to stop at Tim Hortons or are we going to continue on? Right? So we need an Amir, right? So now they say, brother Zayd, you're the Amir. The shaitan comes to him, he turns around, now he's Amir al-Mu'mineen. So now he's the Khalifa, because we got Amir al-Mu'mineens all around the place now, right? So now, you made this brother Amir just to decide about Tim Hortons, man. He's not Amir al-Mu'mineen, right? You're not giving bay'ah for the Khilafah. Right? So, Abu Ubaidah didn't desire the leadership. You see this point? He didn't desire it. But, if he had to be the leader, he would be. Following this, a terrible plague broke out when the Muslims now were attacked by the Romans in the north, in Bilad al-Sham, in Syria, Greater Syria. And they responded to the Romans. A terrible ta'un, this terrible plague broke out. It's like you call today Ebola, or something really bad broke out. People are dying, right? And so Umar, who had made Abu Ubaidah the leader of the forces, he then wrote to Abu Ubaidah and he said, if you get this letter in the morning, then by the afternoon leave. If you get it after Maghrib, leave after Fajr. So Abu Ubaidah wrote back to Umar and said, I know that you concerned for me, but I am in an army of believers. And what happens to them happens to me. Relieve me. Please relieve me of this request. When Umar read this, he cried. And they said, is Abu Ubaidah dead? He said, no, but death is near. It's near him. And sure enough, Abu Ubaidah, radiallahu anh, he got sick with the plague. And on his deathbed, Abu Ubaidah gave the following words. And the translation goes something like this. And this is a legacy for us as well. Listen to the words. Listen what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts through his mouth to us right now. Abu Ubaidah said, let me give you some advice which will cause you to be on the path of goodness always. Establish prayer. Fast in Ramadan. Give sadaqah. Perform Hajj and Umrah. Remain united and support one another. Be sincere to your leaders and do not conceal anything from them. Don't let the world destroy you, for even if a man were to live 1,000 years, he would still end up in the faith that you see me in. And then he said, Mu'adh, meaning Mu'adh ibn Jabal, lead the salat. And he made his shahada, gave his salams, and he died. Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anh led this prayer. And this is an amazing individual who leaves such important qualities to us today because we need transformation. We need change. Change in ourselves, in our family, in our communities, in our nations, in the whole Muslim world. And leadership is crucial. What is the model for transformation? Modesty, right? Haya and strength. Combine the two. Right? Committed, multazim, but flexibility. You're committed to your faith, but you're flexible enough, you can speak to any audience. That's what dawah really is. Your commitment holds you into your deen. Speak the truth when you talk to people. And don't suspect them of lying. No suspicion. The leader, take suspicion out of your heart. You're not going to judge another leader. You're not going to judge people because they come from that tribe. And when you speak, speak straight. Don't lie to us or tell us half-truth. No tribalism. Our leadership, our Jamaat, should be based upon the merits of the believers and not their tribe. not their nationality. This tribalism, which can lead to racism, it's destroying us. It takes away the power of an ummah, which stretches throughout the planet, over 26% of the Earth's population, and turns us into weak nation states with leaders who are like lions devouring us. Because it's not an ummah, right? So ummah consciousness, no tribalism. Amana, trustworthiness. Our leaders need to be trustworthy. When they say they're going to do something, they're going to really do it. They're not going to say one thing today and do another thing the next day. That's your politicians here, right? When your politicians in these secular countries, they run for office, they give you all of these promises, and when they're in, they do the opposite of what they said. But it's too late. He's already in office, right? Our leaders cannot be like this. You have to be sincere. And we have to fulfill. Selflessness. The leader does not put himself over the followers, does not hide himself back in a palace. But the leader is a person who suffers and feels anything the believers feel. That is the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. True mahabbah, true love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not just a word, but true love, that we will follow his sunnah, we will stick to his way, we will believe in the message that came from him. Even if everybody on earth goes astray, we will still stay inside of this message. That is the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which will make us, it gives us this itba', that we will follow him to the ends of the earth. No desire for leadership, no desire for power and leadership and control of other individuals, right? But that modesty, that true love, that sincerity, that haya, that politeness, that shyness, innocence of a child when we deal with other believers, smiling at each other, loving each other. But when danger comes, we're a lion. That's the quality that we need. And we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would bless us in this month of Ramadan. We pray that Allah Azza wa Jal would bless us in the moments that we spend in this heat, in the long length of the day. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us our fasting and our prayers. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept the qiyam in the night. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept everything that we are doing in this glorious month of Ramadan. May Allah Azza wa Jal have mercy on the children of the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah have mercy upon the women and protect the dignity of the women of the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah guide the men of the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah raise up leadership in the Muslim world, balanced leadership, to take us from darkness into light. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us that feeling and understanding to have our last words to be our best words. Kalima la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Aqulu qawli hadha wa astaghfirullah li wa lakum. Wassalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.